Hello, my beautiful bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth, and this is Reading Riley. And it's that time of year finally. We're doing our favorite books of 2021, and I'm so excited. Before we get into the books, let me just tell you really quick a few quick things. First of all, disclosure, full disclosure, that's not the word I'm looking for. You know what I mean. I need to tell you that these are all the books that I've read this year. They're not all new releases that came out in 2021. They're all books that I've read this year. And as of right now, I think I'm at 134 books that I've read in 2021, which is insane. My goal was 75 and booktube happened and I just kept reading. Originally, I wanted to do 2 videos. I saw Caroline Johnson did her top 20 to top 11 and then was going to release her top 10, which I wanted to do, but I figured I'm gonna film them all at the same time anyway, so maybe I'll just release them a day apart. And then I'm like, well, that's just silly. I'll just put them all in one video. But then I'm like, 20 is too many books. So what I'm gonna do is give you my top 15 and I'm gonna do some honorable mentions as well. And I kind of get that idea from Gabby at Gabby Reads. So I figure that's kind of a happy medium there because there's no way I can narrow this down to just 10. There's just no way. There's too many good books that I've read this year. I want to share them with you. If you're gonna watch any of my videos for this year, I hope it's this one because then you can really get a sense of the type of books that I read and the type of books that I love. Also, if you are new here, it really helps me out if you are interested and if you are so inclined to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and then you will be informed of my future videos that I post. Also, all of my social medias are listed down below as always if you'd like to connect there. So let's go ahead and get into the books. So we're going to start out with the honorable mentions, and the first one I want to mention is The Plot, which I really enjoyed this year. The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Delila Harris. Richard Osman, The Thursday Murder Club. This is the only cozy mystery that I've fallen in love with. Still have not read the second book. Really need to get to that. Love this one. Hilarious. Also, one that I've read recently and loved, Bunny. I don't know if you're team Bunny or not, but I am. Oh, also, Local Woman Missing by Kubica. Really enjoyed this one. Super fast paced. Very twisty. Another one that's Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Very much enjoyed this. Amazing atmosphere in here as well. And then also The Martian. I just read this year and I fell in love with Andy Weir's writing and I just loved it so much. So those are my honorable mentions. All right, number 15 is The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. I read this as a buddy read with the lovely Colleen at Little Ghost Creations. This was my second C.J. Tudor. Actually, no, this was my third C.J. Tudor. And I just love her writing style. I love how there's this central theme, this central mystery, and she gives you all of these outside perspectives that just weave themselves so well throughout the story and end up coming together. She's one of those authors that's very detailed in her writing, and this one is kind of on the cusp of paranormal thriller. It's kind of is it, isn't it type of thing. We're following this unconventional vicar and her daughter. They're leaving their parish and moving to a new city where they find all of this disturbing history that's taken place. Some things have also happened in her past, and we come to realize that throughout the book. It's so relatable and thoughtful and thought-provoking at the same time. Really enjoyed this one. Number 14 is going to be The Last House on Needless Street, which I just read and loved it. I did not know I was going to be on the team that loved this book so much. I know some people do not like this. It's definitely one of those that until you kind of figure out what's going on, nothing really makes sense and it kind of seems like BS until you get there. Also, the twist of this is slightly controversial. It's something that I tend to like, but some people do not like. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want to spoil it for you, but I do recommend trying it out. I thought it was respectfully done. I thought it was well done. It had something to say. It wasn't just another thriller book. It definitely made you think a certain way and then flip the switch on you. So then you have to question why you felt a certain way to begin with. Really well written. I'll definitely be reading from this author in the future. My number 13 top book of the year is Meet Me in Another Life by Catriona Silvey. I just need to stress to you, because I've not seen another single person read this book, and it surprised the heck out of me. I did not see this coming. It's beautiful. This is one of those like The House on Needless Street, not in plot or story or anything like that, but in the sense that the cool part about it is the twist. So I can't tell you what the cool part about it is. So I'm just gonna tell you how they describe it. It says, a powerful and poignant speculative love story about a man and woman whose paths continue to cross in different lifetimes. A thrilling and imaginative exploration of what truly defines us and how our choices can change everything. Perfect for fans of The Time Traveler's Wife and Life After Life. So we're following Thora and Santi, and they're strangers. They bump into each other and they have this instant connection. But I'll tell you what, this isn't a love story in the sense that you think it's a love story. Like, this isn't a romance. It's very speculative, and it's about these two people, and their lives just keep interchanging. And in every life, they have different relationships. Sometimes they're father and daughter, sometimes they're teacher and student, but they always find each other, and then they start to remember. And then that's where it picks up into this like really interesting thing as to why they start remembering. I highly recommend this book. If you're interested, absolutely pick it up, because no one's reading it, and it's so good. Why is no one reading this? Anyway, moving on. My number 12 favorite book that I read this year is The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. Oh, it's so shiny. I discovered Karin Slaughter this year, and this is not the only book of hers that is on this list. This one I really enjoyed. It's been on my shelves for a long time and I never picked it up, but I finally did, and I was like, why did I have it on my shelf for so long and never pick it up? We're following Charlie. This is a dual timeline, so it's 28 years in the past and then current day. 28 years ago, their family had this devastating attack on their family home. Their mother died. Their father is this attorney in this small town. He always takes those cases that defends the bad guy, and so he gets a really bad reputation for that. Charlie and her sister Samantha have had this like ruptured relationship between the two of them. They used to be really close. Current day, there is another just devastating event that occurs in their hometown. Charlie is on the scene when it happens, just because she just happens to be there and for an unrelated thing. So she gets sucked up into this investigation of what's going on in the current time. Karin Slaughter always has this sister dynamic within her books that is just perfectly done. It's also so gritty and so wonderful. You learn what's going on from the past timeline every time you get back to the current timeline. Very well done. Just highly recommend this book. It's a little on the longer side, about 500 pages, but it's worth every page. Definitely recommend this one. Number 11 book that I want to recommend is All's Well by Mona Awad. I discovered Mona Awad this year as well. Absolutely love her writing style. Her writing just speaks to me. It's one of those authors where you just connect with their writing. You connect with everything that they say, the way they say it. Her simile, her metaphor, it's just like, it's not so over the top that it's flowery. It's just the way she chooses her words that I connect with. I don't know, I can't explain that. But this is about a woman, Miranda Fitch. She's a theater teacher, theater director. She's kind of lived her life of missed opportunities. Like, she wanted to be on the stage, but now she's teaching because she had this terrible accident that happened and it left her in just constant pain. This has a lot to do with pain. She's tried everything to make her pain go away, but she can't live like she used to live, and she can't experience life in a way that most people experience life because she's constantly thinking about her pain. I think it's a really interesting way to talk about this, because when you are in pain like that, when you're in pain that's so devastating, you're not even yourself anymore. It just eliminates your personality. You are now pain. And so she really self-medicates with a lot of medications. She goes to like this guy to help her do massage work and stuff like that and physical therapy, but nothing helps. She's dealing with all of these bratty kids who don't want to do the play that she wants to do and who are kind of staging a coup against her. And something happens where she's given the opportunity to get rid of her pain, but there are consequences. And so we kind of follow her through that experience. Loved it. I thought it was amazing. I also think this, as opposed to Bunny, is much more approachable. It's not so out there, but it's definitely on the more approachable side. So if you're interested in checking out Mona Awad, I would start here. All right, now we're gonna move on to the top 10. You guys, this was so hard to like put these all in order. I had to do some serious thinking, and I've changed these many times. This is how I'm feeling at this moment. It could change tomorrow. I don't know. As of right now, this is my top 10 for 2021, so let's get into it. Number 10 is a book that I read very recently. Blew me away. I was not expecting this. I was expecting it to be overhyped and just to be okay with it. I actually surprisingly enjoyed this, and that is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This book is following Jessica Miller. She's our main protagonist. We're following 6 friends though. They were all college friends 10 years ago in 2009. We're also following them in the current day, which is 2019 in this book. When they were in college, a person in their friend group was murdered. There were assumptions, and one of them actually took a brunt of the blame for it, but was never convicted. And now in current day, Jessica Miller is going back to her reunion at her college, determined to show everybody how well she's done with her life and determined to make them regret not noticing her. She's got a lot of issues. All of these characters are absolutely morally gray. They're kind of unlikable in that same sense. You don't really know. By the end of this, you're not sure what you should be rooting for and what you shouldn't be rooting for. But I thought it was so well done. The relationships between these characters were so fleshed out. They all seemed like real people to me, which is what I really like. I love seeing that nobody's perfect. The idea that we all make our mistakes, and not just mistakes, but even conscious decisions to do the wrong things. That's part of being human. And this book definitely shows where each one of these characters comes from, and you understand why they make the decisions that they make, even though you may not agree with them. It's definitely not dark academia. I know a lot of people are saying this is dark academia. It's academia, and it's dark, but it's very much like that side of college that's like frat house, sorority. It's my experience of college, and that is not dark academia. I wish it was, because that would mean that I went to Harvard or something, which would be much cooler. Anyway, I'm going on too long about this. Highly recommend it. Number 10. Ooh, I'm excited for this one. Okay, some of these are kind of controversial, I'm realizing as I pull them up, but I can only go with my gut and how I felt about these books at the time, and this one, number 9, destroyed me when I read it. I was so moved. I was so empowered. It affected me on a visceral level, and that book is Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. I didn't know what to expect when I bought this book, when I read this book. I mean, it was kind of a cover buy for me. Look at that. It's just meat. It's gorgeous. It ended up being so much bigger than myself, so much bigger than what I had anticipated. And I know some people don't like this. It's definitely out there. It's definitely weird. It's like a fever dream. You really have to suspend your disbelief with this one. But basically, we're following this woman. She is on a journey. She's a new mother. She's an artist as well, and she spent a lot of time developing her art and being free with her spirit and her soul. And when she becomes a mother, she kind of forgets who she is, and she starts to lose that spark within her that made her feel special and important, and like she had something to offer this world. And now it's just like everything is for this child. And for the first part of this book, she's just the mother. She doesn't even have a name. She's just the mother. You're following her on her journey as she starts to grow sharp teeth and patches of fur. Weird things are happening, and she thinks that she might be turning into a dog. So we're trying to figure out why this is happening, what's going on, and by the end of this, she's Nightbitch. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna leave it at that. It's so empowering, very feminist book. I've heard it compared to Kafka a lot. I haven't read Kafka, so I don't know, but I might have to at this point. I gave it 5 stars. I closed this book when I finished it and was like screaming with joy and glee. So I'll just leave it at that. That's my number 9. Okay, my number 8 book for 2021 is a horror, and this one kind of took me by surprise too. When I first read this, I don't know what I was expecting. I had just heard some buzz about it, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out. It, again, took me off guard, and that is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I haven't found another book of his yet that I adore as much as this one, but this rocked my world. This book was so incredibly well written. I think the length is perfect. We're following 4 American Indian men. In their past, they had made some kind of choice, some kind of decision as a group of the 4 of them that is basically following them into their adulthoods. It's a tale of revenge. It's a tale of cultural identity and traditions and the kind of exploration of leaving behind tradition and what is tradition good for. And it's almost like a folklore, folktale type vibe, but it's also horrific, haunting, and devastating. I don't know what the words are to describe this, but the last bit of this, I had to sit for a minute and just like take it in because I was in awe of this. And one of our main characters is a mail carrier, which I was for the last 3 years up until a few months ago. And so I was literally carrying the mail, listening to them talking about him carrying the mail. And so I thought it was really cool. So I related to it in that sense too. Well told, as terrifying as a book can be, I think. There's definitely an interesting twist in there. So I'll leave it at that. All right, number 7. I read this, I think for summer-ween or winter-ween. Winter-ween? I read it for a ween. I thought it was amazing, and I also think it would be, I read it in the summer, so I guess it would have been summer-ween. But I think this would be a great winter read as well, and that's called No Exit by Taylor Adams. I kept hearing things about this book, and everyone was talking about No Exit, how they love No Exit, and when I heard the initial rundown of this, I thought, wow, that sounds interesting, but something about it just never sprung me into picking it up. And so I was like, finally, I was like, okay, I'll pick this up. I'll read it, fine. And I did, and I loved it. So fast-paced, so twisty, so atmospheric. So we're following Darby Thorne, and she's on her way home from college to see her mother who is sick and not doing well. There's this massive snowstorm, and she ends up having to pull over into a rest stop. If you haven't heard this synopsis before, I'm sure everyone's heard the synopsis, but if you haven't, this is for you. There's like 8 people, I think, that are in this rest stop with her. They are stuck there. There's no going anywhere. So we've got like an isolated setting, and they're waiting for the trucks to come in the morning to clear the road so that they can all continue on with their journeys. But while she's there, she's outside, and she glances over at another person's truck and notices that inside is a cage, and inside the cage is a little girl. So one of the people that she's stuck there with is, at the very least, a child abuser / kidnapper, etc. So then we follow her to figure out what's going on, and we eventually are able to unpack what is the truth, what is not the truth, what is the truth. But the ending really got me so good. It's like one of those double twists. Definitely if you're looking for something fast-paced, if you're looking for something that's gonna shock you, that's gonna twist you, this is the one right here. Go for it. All right, number 6. This is an author that I've already mentioned on this list, but I just could not go without recognizing the talent and the amazingness of this author in this particular book, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I loved it so much. Something about Andy Weir's writing is just so intriguing, and he writes characters in such a lovely way where they are just so real and so human and hilarious. He is so funny. There's a lot of talk in here about science, which I particularly like. You don't have to understand the science. You don't have to understand it. You just know that it's there and it makes sense. You just trust that it makes sense. He could be bullshitting for all I know, and I would still be like, yes, okay, yeah, what happens next? This is about this guy, Ryland Grace, and he wakes up in space. He's by himself with his ship's AI, except for the fact that he sees the bodies of his crewmates who have not made it, and he can't remember anything. Slowly, he starts to heal, and he starts to remember things, and he realizes that he's supposed to save the world. Whoops, forgot about that. And basically now it's up to him, and he meets a friend along the way, and you say, he's in space, how is he supposed to meet a friend? Well, you have to read the book to find out, because it's amazing, and it's so heartwarming and so fucking beautiful. Like, I love Andy Weir's writing, and if you're not familiar, there's another one that I read of his this year, aside from MArtian, aside from this, that I really want to shout out, and I want to put on this list, but it's 3 pages long, so it just feels like I shouldn't take up one of these spots with a 3-page story, but I do want to tell you about it. It's called The Egg, and it's a short story by Andy Weir. You can find it on Scribd if you're interested, but I highly recommend reading that. It'll take you like 5 minutes. It's astounding how he can write 3 pages of words and have it be so thought-provoking and so interesting. I'm just a huge fan of Andy Weir. I think he's wonderful. Honestly, I kind of have a crush on him. Anyway, moving on. Next is my number 5 on this list, and this one, I feel like it's debatable whether this is horror or a thriller. I tend to think of it as more of a thriller, but I know it's been marketed as horror, which is interesting, but It is another one of these books that absolutely blew my mind. I just love it so much. I think it's astounding. And that is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Iain Reid. Another author that I found this year. I found so many amazing new authors this year, and it's all because of BookTube, and I love it so much. I'm so appreciative. So I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is another controversial one, another one where the main selling point of this is the twist, so I really can't tell you what's happening. If you know, you know. It's a pretty short book. I think it's like 250 pages. Not even, it's like 200 pages. It's like a 200-page book. Ah! We're following this couple, and they're driving back to his parents' house in kind of in the country. It's like a farmish area. She's meeting his parents for the first time. The whole way on the drive there, they're having these conversations where it's kind of intellectual as well. I would actually compare that aspect of it to Andy Weir, so it's kind of similar in that sense where you could look at this as a bit pretentious, but just go with the flow, you know, just go with it. I'm attracted to intelligence, and I find all of the things they talk about very fascinating. That doesn't mean I understand it or would have that conversation as well, but I appreciate it. So anyway, they're having these conversations, and she's thinking that she might want to break up with him this whole time. And it's weird because she's having these thoughts. He's kind of responding to her thoughts without her really saying them. And she's like, can he read my mind? Like, what's going on here? I would kind of consider this an isolated setting book, but not completely, because they do leave the house at some point. But most of the time, most of this book, there's not a lot of action happening. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of figuring out who these characters are, what's happening, what happened in their past, things like that. There is a Netflix adaptation of this, which is very cinematically beautiful, but makes no sense. So I highly recommend the book over the movie. But yeah, that twist. Oh, got me so good, and I loved it. Again, controversial trope, controversial twist. Are you brave enough to try it? I don't know what else to say. It's not brave enough, because if it triggers you, that is not your fault. But for me, it's if you tend to like the books that I like and the twists that I like, I recommend it, obviously. Moving on. My number 4 favorite book of this year. I don't have a physical copy of it, but I read this for a vlog where I was reading Ashley's recommendations from Ashley's little library. I was not expecting to love this book at all, and it blew me out of the water, and that is Magrations by Charlotte McConaghy. Yeah, I went into this actually pretty pessimistic. I'm not gonna lie. I went into this like, okay, she loves it, like I'll try, whatever. Even the first like bit of the book, I was still feeling kind of the same way, like not really connecting to the characters, like what's this lady's deal? But then it sucked me in. It's set in kind of like a near future dystopia where basically 80% of the world's animals have gone extinct because of the ways that we have treated this earth. And so it's very much like a climate change book, but also at the same time we're following, I can't remember her name right now, but our main protagonist, and she's had a bit of a past, and she wants to follow this Arctic tern on their last migration. She finds this ship of fishermen that she tries to convince them to let her on their ship. There aren't hardly any fish. There are tons of protesters. People hate fishermen because they're taking up those resources, and they're killing those resources and profiting off of it because of the place that the world is in. She gets on board with these guys, and she's like, look, the Arctic tern, it follows the fish. That's how it eats. So if you let me come with you, I will help you find the fish, and you will help me follow these Arctic terns. And then along the way, you figure out her entire backstory, you figure out why she wants to follow these Arctic terns, all of these dynamics between these characters, and it's so beautifully heartbreaking and wonderful and artistic and poetic, and just makes you think about life and the things that are like beautiful in this world. Oh, it's so good. I just can't go on enough about this. I thank you, Ashley, for suggesting I read this because it's just so good. Oh my God, and I love her writing so much. I was so shocked. I was so shocked and taken off guard by this book. Even if it doesn't sound good to you, I still recommend you read it. This isn't my typical read. It's not something that I would typically pick up ever, and I'm so glad I did. All right, and now we move on to the top 3 books of 2021. I'm so excited. Okay. The next 2, I think, are pretty widely liked and loved. At least the authors are. Number 3 It's by one of my favorite authors. Absolutely adore this author's writing style and tone of their books. I'm obsessed. And so that is going to be Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. And I feel like a lot of people love Sharp Objects more than this. I still have not read Gone Girl. I've seen the movie a million times. I'm going to get to it. I know I'll love it. But I've read all of her other books, and of those, this is my absolute favorite. We're following Libby Day. Maybe it's because she's a redhead like me and she's a little saucy. She's another one of those morally great characters that you just fall in love with because she's so vulnerable and she's so flawed. Anyway, when she was 7 years old, her family was murdered. There was a break-in one night and they were massacred. Everyone died except for her and her brother. Her brother is now in prison because he is accused of, or he's convicted of, killing the rest of their family. It's a dual timeline. We're going between 1985, when this murder happened, murders, and present day. And as we go back to the 1985 timeline, you get, it's just all the one day of the murder. So you're getting little snippets at a time of the actual murder, what happened, who saw what, when, where. And then current day, we're following Libby as she's struggling because she basically got a lot of media attention when she was a kid and never really had to find a job or work for anything. And she's kind of very into herself. She doesn't really care about other people. She's been just living off of money that people have given her out of their sympathy. And now, you know, she's like 30 or so and their sympathy is wearing out. There have been other little girls that have been through devastating tragedies and the focus isn't really on her anymore. And so she has to figure out a way to make money. She meets this kid who has a kill club, which is basically like a true crime club with his friends. They are investigating her family's murder and they pay her to help them investigate. That's all I'll say. So freaking good. The twists are amazing. The writing's beautiful. And I love Gillian Flynn. There you go. Next, my number 2 book of the year. And that is going to be Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I told you she was gonna come up again. I just love this cover. It's so freaking gorgeous. I finally got my own copy of this. I'm in love. This is actually blurbed by Gillian Flynn. It says, Slaughter's eye for detail and truth is unmatched. I'd follow her anywhere. Oh, they're like besties. Anyway, this one is along the same lines as A Good Daughter. We're following these 2 sisters and we're following their dynamic. Once upon a time, there were 3 sisters, but years and years ago, their 3rd sister went missing. These sisters have kind of a rough relationship since their sister went missing. They are, again, very flawed, imperfect people. One of them is married to this super rich guy and just living her best life. And the other one is kind of struggling and raising her daughter as a single parent. And then one day, the first sister's husband is killed in front of her in the street. The sisters are brought back together by his passing. And by coming back together, they start to figure things out about their past that they didn't necessarily put 2 and 2 together before. Also, there are girls going missing and they're thinking maybe that is somehow connected to our sister. Incredibly gritty and real and dark. Dark, dark, dark. Trigger warning galore for this one. If you haven't read it, if somehow you have not read this book yet, do yourself a favor. Read it. It's incredible. There's a lot of really, really messed up stuff that happens in this book, but it's very fast paced. It keeps your attention the entire time. Highly, highly recommend. All right, and then we have my very favorite book of 2021. And if you've been watching me for a while, I don't feel like this is gonna be a surprise, although I haven't talked about it in a while. And this is not a thriller or horror book. Surprisingly, this is a, I guess, sci-fi book? Speculative sci-fi book. It is The Humans by Matt Haig. This book rocked my world, and in the best way possible. I have a video just of a review of this if you're interested in finding out more about it, but basically this is involving aliens. Okay, I'll just put that there. So I guess sci-fi, but it's not. On Earth, there is this man who is a mathematician, and he's on the verge of discovering this equation, this mathematical theory that has never been proven before, and it could change everything. The way we live, the way things are made. It could change everything about our world. The aliens have been watching us from afar, and they're like, this guy's onto this, and the humans are not ready for this kind of technology. It will destroy them. We need to stop them before they figure it out. So they send one of their aliens to basically take over the body of this mathematician. They kill him, take over his body, and then he's on a mission to figure out who else knows what's going on. And so when he gets to Earth, he doesn't understand the way we live. He doesn't understand why we have noses. He thinks they're disgusting. He doesn't understand why we wear clothes and why we're ashamed of our bodies. And there are so many insights that he has to us as humans coming from an outsider perspective that are just things that we do every day that we don't even think about why. It's part of our culture. It's part of the way we grew up. It's just ingrained in us and what we know of life to be. But when you think about it from an outsider perspective, then it does seem kind of odd. And it's funny. And he thinks humans are disgusting. He doesn't understand how we find each other attractive or anything like that. He hates his wife, this man's wife and child, and is just barely getting by trying to complete his mission. Then he slowly falls in love with humanity. And it's just one of the most hilarious, heartwarming books I've ever read. I don't think I've ever laughed out loud so much while reading a book as I have when I read this. It makes you feel so small in the best way, and that your problems aren't necessarily everything you might think they are. You know, it makes you think big picture. I went down a Matt Haig rabbit hole this year too. I think I've read 5 of his books this year, and there's not a single one that I haven't liked yet. He's another one of those, like Mona Awad, where I just connect with his writing style, and I feel like you either connect with him or you don't. I know Midnight Library was a really popular one either this year or last year, which I've read as well, and some people love that and some people hate it. If you hated it, you probably won't like this. If you liked Midnight Library, read this book, because the way he writes his book and the way he connects to the readers and the audience, it's the same, but he's just telling a different story. His writing will always speak to me. I love his openness about mental health, about his struggles and his vulnerability. He puts that into these characters in a way that is shockingly gorgeous, and I just can't recommend it enough. Matt Haig is one of my favorite authors, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. And that's it. That is my top books of 2021, my favorites of the year. I can't believe it's already almost 2022. If you are still with me, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Check it out in the description. I will link all of these books for you there. And that's gonna be it for today. Don't forget that life is short, so read Riley, cheers, and goodbye.